Good evening, dear travelers, and welcome back to Snug as a Bug. Tonight, we invite you to settle into the peaceful Shire, where we'll wander through three of its most cherished tales, each filled with charm, adventure, and warmth. So take a deep breath, sink into your cozy bed, and let yourself drift into the enchanting world of Hobbiton, where timeless stories come to life under the starlit sky. Our first tale, the tale of Farmer Maggot's encounter, brings us to the farm of the wily Farmer Maggot, whose mushroom fields are the envy of young hobbits all across the Shire. Mischievous visitors sneak about his patch by moonlight, only to discover they're not the only ones drawn to the shadows of his farmland. Farmer Maggot's encounter with a mysterious traveler may reveal there's more to this farmer than anyone in Hobbiton ever knew. Next, we'll join in Bilbo's birthday bash and the Enchanted Fireworks. Step into Hobbiton's grandest celebration as we relive Bilbo Baggins's unforgettable 11th birthday, filled with laughter, friendship, and the legendary fireworks display that lit up the Shire in a blaze of magical colors. This tale brings you to the heart of Hobbit life, with festive cheer that echoes through the hills and a warmth that will linger long after the night ends. Finally, we turn back to an age of bravery in the legend of Bullroarer Took. Discover the tale of Bandobra's Bullroarer Took, the only hobbit who ever led his kin into battle. As goblins invade the peaceful borders of the Shire, Bullroarer Took rises with unmatched courage, rallying the hobbits to defend their homeland. His heroic stand, as told through generations, became a legend that forever echoes through the fields of the Shire. Let each tale draw you further into the Shire's peaceful embrace, allowing you to relax and drift into sleep as these stories carry you through a world of wonder, courage, and friendship. Now, before we begin, let's take a moment to settle in fully. Close your eyes and imagine that you are standing in the Shire, the air fresh with the scent of earth and blooming wildflowers. The evening sky stretches above you, a tapestry of deep blues and purples, with stars twinkling like scattered diamonds. A soft, cool breeze stirs the leaves of the ancient trees, rustling through the fields and carrying the gentle sounds of laughter and song from Hobbiton in the distance. All around, the rolling hills of the Shire glow softly in the moonlight. Little hobbit holes dot the hillside, their round doors painted in warm, inviting colors, framed with flowers and lanterns casting a golden glow. There is a peaceful hum in the air, a quiet magic that seems to settle over the land like a blanket of calm. As you walk along a winding path lined with smooth stones, you can feel the gentle warmth of the earth beneath your feet. Somewhere nearby, the soft babble of a stream joins the evening's melody, and the faint aroma of roasted food drifts through the air, adding a sense of home and comfort. You feel the timeless essence of the Shire all around you, this land that holds stories of adventure, friendship, and courage, a place where life is savored slowly and every moment feels like a treasured memory. Now, dear traveler, you are ready to begin our journey into the heart of the Shire. The Tale of Farmer Maggot's Encounter. Chapter 1. The Mischievous Hobbits. Farmer Maggot had always prided himself on being one of the Shire's most seasoned farmers. Known for his famed mushroom patch and an uncanny ability to predict the weather, he was considered by many as a fixture of the Brandywine River's peaceful farmlands. His routine was steadfast, as reliable as the sunrise. He'd wake before dawn, tend to his crops and survey his prized mushroom patch. His loyal dogs, Grip, Fang and Wolf, were his constant companions, trailing behind him with every step he took, as if they too were enchanted by the mystical aura of the mushrooms he grew. Despite Farmer Maggot's strict demeanour, whispers had circulated among the Shire folk about the true nature of his mushrooms. Some claimed they held strange powers, others said they had peculiar, almost magical effects on those who ate them. It wasn't that Farmer Maggot encouraged such rumours, but he certainly didn't discourage them either. He found that a bit of mystery kept wandering hands away, yet for every hobbit who kept their distance, there were a few intrepid young ones who saw Farmer Maggot's patch as a challenge. Among them was Peregrine Took, affectionately known as Pippin. Mischievous and light-hearted, Pippin had a reputation for getting into trouble with a grin on his face. And this chilly autumn night, he and a group of his friends had decided to try their luck at Farmer Maggot's farm. Pippin's companions included Fredegar Bolger, a hobbit known for his love of food and cautious nature, and young Meriadoc Brandybuck, or Merry, whose adventurous spirit often rivaled Pippin's own. The three of them huddled together at the edge of Maggot's field, peering through the hedges at the quiet farmhouse. The night was still, save for the occasional hoot of an owl or the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. Pippin rubbed his hands together, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "It's simple," he whispered, glancing at his friends. "We just sneak in, pick a few mushrooms, and we're off before he even notices." Fredegar, or Fatty as he was known, shifted uncomfortably. "I've heard stories," he muttered, glancing nervously at the farmhouse. "They say Maggot's got eyes in the back of his head, and those dogs, they're said to be as fierce as wolves." Merry laughed softly, slapping Fatty on the back. "Oh, come now, Fatty, they're just dogs. Besides, Pippin's right. Maggot's probably inside enjoying his supper. We'll be in and out before he can put his boots on." With a silent nod of agreement, the three young hobbits crept under the hedgerow, their hearts racing with excitement and a touch of fear. The air around the mushroom patch was damp, filled with the earthy scent of soil and the faint aroma of mushrooms. Under the pale light of the moon, the mushrooms gleamed like jewels, each one ripe and ready for the taking. As they approached the patch, they moved with quiet steps, each hobbit's gaze darting around to ensure no one was watching. Pippin reached down, plucking a large mushroom and sniffing it with a satisfied grin. "Look at these beauties," he whispered, holding it up for his friends to see. "Farmer Maggot grows the finest mushrooms in all the Shire." But just as he reached for another, a low, rumbling growl broke the silence. It was so deep that it seemed to vibrate through the ground beneath their feet. The hobbits froze, their wide eyes darting toward the sound. Emerging from the shadows were Farmer Maggot's three dogs, their eyes gleaming with a mixture of curiosity and intent as they approached. "Run!" Pippin hissed, his voice barely above a whisper. The three hobbits scattered, their feet pounding against the soft earth as they bolted back toward the hedgerow. But Pippin, in his hurry, stumbled over a vine, sending him sprawling into a muddy patch of soil. Mushrooms flew from his hands, landing in scattered pieces around him. The growling grew louder as Grip, Fang, and Wolf closed in on him, their tails wagging with excitement at having cornered their quarry. Pippin scrambled to his feet, but before he could take a step, the unmistakable shadow of Farmer Maggot fell over him. Chapter 2. Farmer Maggot's Wrath. "Caught you, didn't I?" Farmer Maggot's voice boomed, startling Pippin so thoroughly that he nearly toppled over again. The old farmer's figure was imposing, his tall, sturdy frame silhouetted against the moonlit sky. He wore his customary broad-brimmed hat, which seemed to cast an even darker shadow over his already severe expression. His sharp eyes, though, held a twinkle that hinted at something other than pure wrath. Pippin gulped, rubbing his muddy hands together as he tried to summon a charming smile. "Evening, Farmer Maggot. Lovely night for a stroll, wouldn't you agree?" Farmer Maggot let out a deep, gruff chuckle. "Aye, a stroll through my mushroom patch, eh? And with such a keen interest in my prized mushrooms, no less." He folded his arms, his eyes narrowing slightly as he took in Pippin's muddied clothes and the scattered mushrooms around him. "Now I reckon those weren't exactly free for the taking, young Took." Pippin stammered, casting a quick glance back toward the hedgerow where Merry and Fatty were hiding. "Well, you see, we just thought a taste, perhaps." Before he could finish, Farmer Maggot held up a hand, silencing him. "Listen here, lad," he said, in a voice that was firm but not unkind. "I know the ways of young hobbits well enough, and I've seen your face around these parts more than once. But next time, ask before you take. I'm more inclined to share than you might think." Pippin blinked, his cheeks flushing with embarrassment and relief. "I'm sorry, Farmer Maggot," he murmured, his voice earnest. "I promise it won't happen again." Farmer Maggot's expression softened, and he gestured toward the scattered mushrooms. "Go on, take a few for your trouble and be off with you." Pippin gathered a few mushrooms and gave the old farmer a grateful nod before hurrying back to his friends, who emerged from their hiding places with wide eyes. "Did he really let you go?" Fredegar asked, his voice filled with awe. Pippin grinned, holding up the mushrooms triumphantly. "Aye, and he even let me keep a few." But as they made their way home, Pippin couldn't shake the strange feeling that there was more to Farmer Maggot than met the eye. Little did he know that the old farmer's true nature would soon be revealed in an encounter far more mysterious than any of their youthful mischief. Chapter 3. The Mysterious Traveller. It was a night like no other in the Shire, with a chill in the air that hinted at the onset of winter. Farmer Maggot sat in his cosy living room, sipping his tea and enjoying the familiar sounds of his dog's gentle breathing by the hearth. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, its song strangely sombre, as if it carried tidings from faraway lands. He had just leaned back in his chair, allowing himself a rare moment of relaxation, when a soft but deliberate knock echoed through the room. Grip, Fang, and Wolf perked up, their ears standing alert as they let out quiet, cautious growls. The knock sounded again, faint yet somehow insistent, as if the one behind the door carried a quiet urgency. Farmer Maggot rose slowly, his brow furrowing as he approached the door. Visitors were uncommon this late, especially in such a secluded part of the Shire. His hand hesitated on the door handle, his mind briefly entertaining the idea that it might be one of the young hobbits come back with another attempt at mischief. But something in his gut told him this was no ordinary visitor. When he opened the door, the sight before him was unlike anything he'd expected. Standing under the porch's dim light was a tall, cloaked figure, their face shadowed by a hood pulled low. But even through the shadow, Farmer Maggot could see the stranger's eyes, keen and piercing, glinting with an intensity that suggested they had seen far more of the world than any hobbit of the Shire. "Good evening, Master Maggot," the stranger said in a low, gravelly voice, inclining his head slightly in respect. Farmer Maggot, though momentarily taken aback, held his ground. "And who might you be calling at my door so late in the evening?" he asked, his tone cautious but steady. The stranger chuckled softly, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of many roads travelled. "Merely a wanderer, passing through your peaceful lands," he replied, his voice softening. "I've heard tales of your fine mushrooms, Farmer Maggot, and I hoped you might share a few with a weary traveller." The request was simple enough, but something in the man's tone sent a shiver down Farmer Maggot's spine. This was no ordinary wanderer, of that he was certain. Nonetheless, hospitality was a cherished tradition among hobbits, and Farmer Maggot was no exception. He stepped aside, gesturing for the stranger to enter. The man's cloak brushed the floor as he moved into the warm glow of the room, his eyes scanning the space with a look of appreciation. He settled by the hearth, where the firelight revealed more of his features. A weathered face with sharp cheekbones, dark hair streaked with silver, and an air of mystery that seemed to cling to him like a second cloak. With quiet efficiency, Farmer Maggot set about preparing a meal, placing a dish of his mushrooms before the stranger. The man accepted it with a nod, savouring each bite as though it were the finest feast he had ever tasted. Farmer Maggot observed him in silence, the warmth of the fire casting flickering shadows across both their faces. "You have a cosy home, Farmer Maggot," the stranger remarked between bites, his voice warm yet distant. "The Shire is a rare place, a sanctuary untouched by the troubles of the world." Farmer Maggot's curiosity finally got the better of him. "And what troubles would those be, if I may ask?" The stranger's eyes darkened slightly as he gazed into the fire. "Troubles from the east," he murmured, his tone laced with a quiet sorrow. "Shadows are stirring, reaching out like dark tendrils across the lands. Few places are left untouched." Farmer Maggot shifted uncomfortably, feeling the weight of the stranger's words settle over him like a cloud. Though he was but a simple farmer, content with his peaceful life, he could sense that this man spoke of things beyond his understanding, of distant lands and dark forces he'd only ever heard of in whispered tales. "And do you think the Shire will be safe?" The stranger's gaze lingered on the flames as though he saw something within them that only he could perceive. His expression softened, but there was a hint of sadness, a sorrow that came from knowing far too much about a world Farmer Maggot had only heard about in tales. "No place is ever truly safe," he replied softly, as if speaking more to himself than to the farmer. "But the Shire has something few other places possess, a certain resilience, a purity of spirit that's hard to touch or tarnish. That's not to say it's impervious, but the Shire is unique. You hobbits have something precious here." Farmer Maggot nodded slowly, absorbing the words. He had always considered the Shire a tranquil haven, far removed from the dangers of the world beyond its borders. Hearing this stranger, with his quiet yet powerful tone, speak of it with such reverence made Farmer Maggot's chest swell with pride. But the faint twinge of worry that had begun when the traveller first mentioned shadows from the east now grew stronger. "And what brings you to these parts, if I may ask?" Maggot ventured, trying to sound casual but genuinely curious. The stranger smiled faintly. "I am a seeker," he said after a moment's hesitation, "looking for a place where one might find peace, if only for a night. My road is long, and my path uncertain. I follow whispers, stories that speak of lands unspoiled by the darkness that is spreading elsewhere." The words resonated with Farmer Maggot, who had always held a deep respect for the land he tilled and the simple joys of farming. He often felt that his farm and the Shire as a whole were safe from the turmoil and corruption that seemed to plague other lands. But hearing this traveller, someone who had clearly seen much of the world, speak of shadows creeping closer, gave him pause. He shifted in his seat, glancing over at his dogs, who had surprisingly settled down, their usual alertness replaced by an unusual calm. "Well, he began, clearing his throat. "The Shire may be simple, but we have our own ways of dealing with trouble. The hobbits here may be small, but there's courage enough to go around when it's needed." The traveller's eyes sparkled with a flicker of admiration, and he nodded thoughtfully. "Indeed," he replied. "I've seen hobbits face perils others would balk at. Courage comes in many forms, Farmer Maggot. Sometimes it's in holding on to the things that matter most, even in the face of uncertainty." Farmer Maggot felt a swell of pride at the stranger's words. He had always believed that strength was not only in deeds, but in the quiet resilience of tending to the land, keeping family close, and cherishing the beauty of everyday life. Yet there was something haunting in the traveller's words, an unspoken truth that made him realize how fragile even the Shire's peace might be. Chapter 4. A Meal and a Warning. As the evening wore on, the fire in the hearth crackled softly, filling the room with a cozy warmth that softened the shadows dancing along the walls. The stranger ate slowly, savouring each bite of Farmer Maggot's mushrooms with a reverence that hinted he'd not had a home-cooked meal in quite some time. Farmer Maggot watched him, noting the slight weariness in the man's movements, the careful way he handled his cloak and utensils, as though he were used to long travels and scarce comforts. The stranger glanced up, meeting Farmer Maggot's gaze. "These mushrooms are truly remarkable," he said, his voice softening. "It's been far too long since I've tasted food with such life in it. There's something unique about your crops, something one doesn't often find in lands beyond the Shire." Farmer Maggot chuckled, feeling a flush of pride. "It's the soil, I reckon," he replied, folding his arms and leaning back. "Years of hard work and good care. Nothing fancy, just a hobbit's touch, I suppose." The stranger's eyes lingered on him, filled with a hint of something Farmer Maggot couldn't quite place. "Perhaps," he murmured. "Or perhaps there's something about this land that even you hobbits don't fully understand, something ancient and powerful that keeps it untouched by the troubles of the world." The words sent a chill down Farmer Maggot's spine. He was no stranger to tales of magic and mystery, but he had always dismissed them as stories meant to entertain. Yet hearing it from this traveller, a man who seemed as worldly and wise as he was mysterious, made it feel as if there might be some truth to the notion. "Troubles of the world," he repeated, frowning. "You speak as if the world beyond the Shire is in turmoil." The stranger sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly as if the weight of countless memories rested upon them. "Indeed it is," he replied, his voice heavy with a quiet sorrow. "I've seen lands ravaged by conflict, people torn from their homes, forests burned to ashes, and rivers poisoned. There are dark forces at work, forces that seek to claim all that is good and pure." Farmer Maggot felt a lump form in his throat. He had always thought of his farm, his life in the Shire, as simple and unaffected by the world's troubles. But the stranger's words painted a grim picture, a world he could hardly fathom, a world where peace was as fleeting as the morning mist. The traveller looked at him, his gaze sharp and intent. "But do not let fear grip your heart, Farmer Maggot. Darkness may loom, but so does the light. And in places like the Shire, there is a quiet strength, a resilience that cannot be easily extinguished. You hobbits have a way of preserving the good in this world, a way of holding on to what matters." Farmer Maggot nodded, feeling a surge of determination. The stranger's words filled him with a strange, almost defiant pride. He might be a simple farmer, but he was determined to protect his land, his family, and the peace of the Shire with every ounce of his strength. The The traveller set down his fork, a faint smile playing on his lips. "And remember," he continued, "there are those who watch over you, even if you may not see them. Those who care for the Shire and all it represents. They may not walk among you openly, but they are there in ways both subtle and profound." Farmer Maggot felt a flicker of curiosity. "Who are these watchers, then? And how do they protect us?" The traveller's smile faded, replaced by a look of deep contemplation. "They are guardians of a sort. Protectors who dwell in shadows, who keep the darkness at bay, often at great cost to themselves. They may not be seen, but their influence is felt. They are there when needed most, though they seldom ask for recognition." Farmer Maggot could sense that the stranger spoke from experience, as if he knew these guardians personally, or had even been among them at some point. He had no way of knowing, of course, but something in the traveller's gaze hinted at sacrifices made and burdens carried. A silence settled between them, the kind of silence that held weight and meaning. Farmer Maggot realized that this was no ordinary encounter, no mere traveller passing through. The stranger had come for a reason, though what that reason was remained unclear. Chapter 5. The Dawn Departure. As dawn approached, a pale light began to filter through the windows, casting a soft glow over the room. Farmer Maggot stifled a yawn, surprised at how quickly the night had passed. The stranger rose from his seat, a look of quiet gratitude in his eyes as he turned to face the farmer. "I must be on my way," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "The road calls to me, and there are other places I must visit before my journey is through." Farmer Maggot nodded, feeling an unexpected pang of regret. Despite the mystery surrounding this traveller, he had come to respect him, to feel a certain kinship with this man who had walked so many paths. The traveller reached into his cloak and produced a small, silver leaf-shaped pin, its surface catching the first rays of dawn. He held it out to Farmer Maggot, his eyes warm but serious. "Take this, Master Maggot," he said. "It may serve you well one day, a reminder that you are not alone, that there are forces watching over the Shire." Farmer Maggot took the pin, marvelling at its craftsmanship. It was delicate, yet sturdy, cool to the touch, and seemed to hold a strange energy, as if it contained a part of the traveller's essence. He clutched it tightly, feeling a surge of strength and reassurance. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't fully understand, but thank you." The traveller inclined his head, a faint smile touching his lips. "May the Shire remain a beacon of peace, Master Maggot. Farewell, and remember, courage comes in many forms." With that, the traveller turned and stepped out into the cool dawn, his cloak billowing softly as he disappeared into the mist. Farmer Maggot watched him go, a profound sense of awe and gratitude settling over him. He stood at his doorway, clutching the silver pin, feeling its quiet strength resonate within him. Though he didn't fully understand the significance of the night's events, he knew that something had shifted within him, that he had been touched by a mystery far greater than himself. As he returned to his fields, the Shire stretched before him, bathed in the gentle light of morning. The peaceful rhythm of life continued, unbroken, yet forever enriched by the presence of those unseen guardians who watched over it. And somewhere in the depths of the Shire, young Pippin Took and his friends would soon hear of Farmer Maggot's encounter with a mysterious traveller. They would whisper of it in awe, inspired by the tale of the old farmer who had met a stranger from a world far beyond their own. But the story of Bilbo's grand birthday bash awaited them next, a tale that would bring even greater enchantment to the beloved Shire. Bilbo's Birthday Bash and the Enchanted Fireworks. Chapter 1. Preparations for a Grand Party. In the Shire, nothing stirred excitement quite like the promise of a grand celebration, and this one was set to be the most extravagant party the Hobbits of Hobbiton had ever witnessed. For this was Bilbo Baggins's 11th birthday, a rare milestone that only fueled the mystery and fascination surrounding the eccentric hobbit of Bag End. Word of the upcoming party had spread like wildfire through the Shire, and every hobbit from the Brandywine Bridge to the borders of Buckland was abuzz with rumours and anticipation. Bilbo had spent weeks preparing for the event, secretly consulting with close friends and family members. He'd organised everything down to the last detail, hiring the finest musicians, arranging the most delectable feast, and even coordinating a very special fireworks display. This display was to be crafted by none other than Gandalf the Grey, an old friend of Bilbo's who was both feared and revered among the hobbits for his uncanny abilities and peculiar ways. The preparations brought Bag End to life with bustling activity. Hobbits from all over the Shire arrived to help with decorations, set up tables, and prepare an enormous array of food and drink. Bilbo had spared no expense, ensuring that every hobbit who attended would have a memory to cherish. Long tables were set up under bright awnings, decorated with wildflowers and wreaths of green leaves. Lanterns were strung from tree to tree, casting warm, golden light over the scene as evening approached. But while most hobbits were busy with practical tasks, others found themselves buzzing with questions and speculations about the special surprises Bilbo had promised. There were whispers of fantastical fireworks, tales of feasts that would rival even the elves, and rumours that Bilbo had a special announcement to make. Even as he oversaw the final details, Bilbo couldn't help but chuckle at the excitement his little event had stirred up. Standing on the hill overlooking Hobbiton, he took a moment to soak in the sight of his beloved Shire, the rolling green hills and cosy hobbit holes nestled along the hillside. With a satisfied sigh, he thought to himself, "This shall be a party no hobbit will ever forget." Chapter 2. An Unusual Guest List. As the day of the party drew closer, Bilbo's guest list was the talk of the Shire. Bilbo had invited nearly every hobbit from Hobbiton, and even extended invitations to several families from Bywater, Tookland, and Buckland. It was said that the Green Dragon Inn had never seen such activity as the locals tried to glean details about who had made the exclusive list. However, a few names on the guest list caused particular excitement and a bit of bewilderment. Gandalf's arrival had caused quite a stir, as hobbits weren't accustomed to wizards wandering around their quiet lands. But Gandalf was a special friend of Bilbo's, and despite his tall, intimidating figure and peculiar habits, many were curious to see what he would bring to the festivities. Then there were rumours of dwarves on the guest list, stout, bearded folk who seldom visited the Shire. Those in the know said Bilbo had travelled with a company of dwarves many years ago, and that these guests were dear friends he hadn't seen in ages. The children especially were excited at the prospect of seeing dwarves, imagining they would regale them with tales of treasure hoards, hidden mountain kingdoms, and dragons. To top it off, Bilbo's own family had come in full force. The Tooks, Bagginses, and Brandybucks had arrived days in advance, setting up their own little camp at the edge of the party grounds. Among them was a certain young hobbit named Frodo Baggins, Bilbo's beloved nephew, who had taken on the role of his assistant and confidant for the party. Frodo, though quiet and reserved, had inherited some of Bilbo's adventurous spirit, and he spent his days running between errands and preparations, all the while enjoying the spectacle unfolding around him. By the time the morning of the party arrived, the Shire was alive with excitement. Every hobbit in Hobbiton seemed to have some task or role to play in making the event a success, and the entire community buzzed with anticipation. As Bilbo prepared himself in Bag End, he glanced over his invitation list one last time, smiling to himself at the thought of bringing together so many hobbits, friends, and family in one place. Chapter 3. The Feast Begins. As the sun began its descent, casting a warm golden glow over the Shire, hobbits from every corner made their way to the spacious green field near Bag End, where the celebration was to be held. They arrived dressed in their finest clothes, carrying small gifts for Bilbo and sharing joyful greetings with one another. Laughter and chatter filled the air, mingling with the smells of roasted meats, baked bread, and sweet pies that wafted from the long tables laden with food. Bilbo, standing on a small platform at the head of the gathering, greeted each guest with a wide smile and a hearty laugh, his bright eyes twinkling with excitement. He was dressed in a richly coloured waistcoat that shimmered in the evening light, and he carried a silver-tipped cane, more for effect than need. Frodo stood by his side, beaming with pride for his uncle. The feast itself was nothing short of legendary. Plates overflowed with food, tankards were filled to the brim with ale, and laughter echoed across the field as hobbits indulged in the hearty fare. There were roasted vegetables from Farmer Maggot's fields, fresh butter churned that morning, and loaves of bread baked to perfection. The children clamoured around tables where fresh-baked cakes were stacked high, each one topped with berries and cream. After several courses, a hush fell over the gathering as Bilbo raised his glass for a toast. He looked out over the crowd, his heart swelling with gratitude and affection for the community he loved so dearly. "To good food, good company, and long life," he declared, his voice carrying across the field. "And to making memories together that will warm our hearts in days to come." The crowd erupted in cheers, raising their tankards and clinking glasses. Hobbits, young and old, joined in the merriment, singing songs, telling tales, and sharing hearty laughs. The air was thick with joy, and even the stars seemed to shine a little brighter that night. But as the evening wore on, there was a growing anticipation among the guests. They had heard whispers of a special surprise, something that only Gandalf could provide. The excitement built with every passing minute, and eyes frequently turned to the tall, cloaked figure of Gandalf, who stood quietly at the edge of the gathering, a knowing smile on his face. Chapter 4. The Enchanted Fireworks. Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky into twilight, Bilbo gave Gandalf a subtle nod. The wizard stepped forward, raising his staff to signal the start of the long-awaited fireworks display. Hobbits scrambled to find the best seats, gathering their children close as everyone's eyes turned to the sky with eager anticipation. Gandalf moved with purpose, lighting the first fuse with a spark from his staff. In an instant, the sky was alight with dazzling colours and patterns that danced across the heavens. The first firework was a great golden sunburst that illuminated the entire field, casting a warm glow over the cheering hobbits below. It was followed by a brilliant display of stars that shimmered in hues of blue and silver, each one sparkling as if it were a real star plucked from the night sky. But these were no ordinary fireworks. Gandalf's magic transformed them into fantastical shapes, swirling dragons that soared across the stars, mighty eagles with wings of fire, and beautiful, glimmering flowers that blossomed and faded in a rainbow of colors. Each explosion seemed to tell a story, and the hobbits watched in awe, gasping and clapping with every new spectacle. Children giggled and squealed with delight as a fiery wolf leapt across the sky, its eyes flashing a bright green before disappearing into a shower of emerald sparks. The adults were no less captivated, their faces lit up with wonder as they watched the sky unfold like a tapestry of magic and colour. And then the grand finale began, a series of thunderous booms that seemed to shake the very ground. The sky filled with a shimmering waterfall of golden sparks cascading down like a river of light. From this brilliant glow emerged a figure, a grand, fiery red dragon with wings spread wide, its scales shimmering with every colour imaginable. The dragon hovered in the sky for a moment, majestic and awe-inspiring, before slowly fading away into the night, leaving only a trail of stardust in its wake. The crowd erupted into applause, cheering and clapping as they tried to take in the magic they had just witnessed. Hobbits spoke in hushed voices, marvelling at the beauty of the fireworks and the skill of the wizard who had crafted them. It was a display unlike anything they had ever seen, a moment that would live on in their memories as one of the most magical nights in the Shire's history. Chapter 5. The Farewell Speech. As the applause began to die down, Bilbo climbed onto a small platform, his gaze sweeping over the crowd with a mixture of joy and sadness. Frodo stood nearby, watching his uncle with a sense of quiet respect. The crowd fell silent as Bilbo raised his hands, signalling that he had something important to say. "Dear friends and family," he began, his voice warm but tinged with emotion. "Tonight has been a night to remember, hasn't it? I thank each and every one of you for coming, for sharing this special occasion with me. It means more to me than I can express." The crowd murmured in agreement, and Bilbo smiled, his eyes lingering on the familiar faces before him. "I don't know what lies ahead for me," he continued, his tone growing softer. "But I do know this. I am grateful for the memories we've made together, for the laughter, the friendship, and the love that have filled my days here in the Shire. And as I look out at all of you, I feel truly blessed." Bilbo paused, taking a deep breath before finishing. "May the Shire remain a place of peace and joy, where each of us can continue to make memories as wonderful as those we've shared tonight." With that, he stepped down from the platform, his speech ending on a note of quiet gratitude. The crowd remained silent for a moment, touched by his words, before bursting into cheers once more. The party continued late into the night, with hobbits dancing, singing, and sharing stories under the stars. As the guests eventually began to depart, they left with hearts full of joy, spirits lifted by the magic and camaraderie of the night. And though Bilbo's farewell hinted at changes to come, none could deny that his 111st birthday would forever remain one of the most cherished memories in all of Hobbiton. The Legend of Bullroarer Took. Chapter 1. A Hobbit Unlike Any Other. Long before the peaceful days of Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, there lived a hobbit unlike any other in the Shire. His name was Bandobras Took, but he was known far and wide by his legendary title, Bullroarer Took. Taller and fiercer than any hobbit before or since, Bullroarer stood nearly 4.5 feet, a giant by hobbit standards. It was said that he could ride a pony like a man and wielded a club so large that no other hobbit could lift it. His presence was formidable, his voice a booming thunder that could be heard across the fields of the Tookland. But Bullroarer was not just known for his size or his strength. He was a Took, a family famous for its adventurous spirit, and he had inherited a bravery that few hobbits could understand, let alone match. Bullroarer had a keen mind and a heart full of courage, and his fame quickly spread throughout the Shire. Hobbits told tales of his great deeds, his booming laughter, and his love for his homeland. Yet, life in the Shire had not always been as quiet and peaceful as it was in the days of the Bagginses. In Bullroarer's time, danger was afoot, dark times were brewing, and an unexpected menace threatened the tranquil fields of the Shire. From the north came a tribe of goblins, cruel and cunning creatures who had heard tales of the Shire's gentle lands and abundant resources. They descended upon the northern borders, bringing chaos and fear in their wake. The hobbits, unused to war and strife, were at a loss. They had never dealt with such a foe, and their peaceful nature left them unprepared for battle. The Shire's inhabitants were terrified, uncertain of what lay ahead. But as the goblins marched closer, there was one hobbit who did not cower. Bullroarer took. And so began the legend of the only hobbit to ever lead his kin into a great battle. Chapter 2. The Goblin Invasion. Word of the goblin invasion spread quickly through the Shire. Frightened families gathered in their homes, children clinging to their parents, as tales of goblin cruelty reached even the farthest corners of Hobbiton. For generations the hobbits had lived in a place untouched by war, their lives woven into the quiet rhythm of farming, feasting, and family gatherings. To hear of goblins, a word that belonged in far-off tales, whispered about by the fire, invading their lands was nothing short of a nightmare. Bullroarer Took, however, saw it differently. When he first heard of the goblin threat, he felt a rush of determination. His blood surged with a mix of fury and pride at the thought of his homeland under siege. His ancestors had braved many hardships to build the Shire, and he would not let it fall into the hands of such creatures. Rallying the Tooks and other families nearby, he began to organize a defense against the goblins. It was not an easy task. Many hobbits were reluctant to leave their homes, fearful of what they might face. They had never wielded weapons, let alone fought in battle. But Bullroarer's courage was infectious, his booming voice and powerful presence enough to convince even the most hesitant hobbits. He promised them that they would stand together, that they would defend their land with every ounce of strength they possessed. Under Bullroarer's leadership, the hobbits crafted makeshift weapons, sharpened farming tools, and gathered supplies. Every day, more hobbits joined the cause, finding strength in each other and in the determination of their leader. Together they formed a small but resolute force, willing to stand against the goblin threat, no matter the odds. As the goblins drew closer, Bullroarer sent word to the surrounding lands, calling for aid. But he knew that they might have to fight alone, and he was prepared for that. He was no stranger to courage, and he knew that the heart of a hobbit, though small, was mighty. The goblins finally reached the northern edge of the Shire, bringing with them a dark cloud that seemed to cast a shadow over the land. Their leader was a cruel and cunning goblin named Golfimble, a figure of terror with a twisted grin and a massive club. His followers jeered and taunted the hobbits, thinking them an easy foe. But Bullroarer Took stood tall before his kin, his voice rising like a war cry. "We may be small, but we are strong," he declared. "The Shire is our home, and we will defend it with all we have." And with those words, the hobbits braced themselves for the battle that would become legend. Chapter 3. The Battle of Greenfields. The battlefield was set on the Greenfields, a wide, open area near the northern border of the Shire. It was a place known for its wildflowers and gentle hills, but on that fateful day it bore witness to the clash of courage and cruelty. The goblins, sneering and overconfident, lined up with weapons in hand, their beady eyes glinting with malice. They saw only a group of hobbits armed with pitchforks and makeshift clubs, and they laughed, thinking the battle would be swift and easy, but they had not counted on Bullroarer Took. Standing at the front of his kin, Bullroarer raised his own club, a mighty piece of oak carved from an ancient tree. His voice rang out across the field, filling his fellow hobbits with a resolve they hadn't known they possessed. "This is our land," he roared. "These fields, these hills, they belong to the Shire, and we will defend them." With that, he charged, his steps thundering across the green fields. His kin followed, a wave of determined hobbits rushing toward the goblins. The battle that ensued was unlike anything the Shire had ever seen. The goblins fought with brute strength, swinging their weapons wildly, expecting the hobbits to scatter. But the hobbits, though smaller, were nimble and quick. They ducked and dodged, using their small size to their advantage. Bullroarer's voice guided them, his presence like a beacon that kept them steady and brave. Bullroarer himself was a sight to behold. His club swung with precision, knocking goblins aside like leaves in the wind. His eyes blazed with fury and determination, and every step he took sent a shockwave of courage through his kin. He fought with a passion born of love for his home, each blow a declaration that the Shire would not fall to darkness. As the battle raged, the goblins began to falter, their overconfidence giving way to fear. They had underestimated the hobbits, never expecting such fierce resistance from such small folk. But the hobbits, driven by Bullroarer's example, fought on with unyielding resolve. And then came the moment that would be spoken of for generations, the clash between Bullroarer Took and Golfimbull. Chapter 4. The Defeat of Golfimbull. Golfimbull, the goblin leader, was a monstrous sight. Taller than any of his kin, he wielded a jagged club that glinted with malice. He sneered at the hobbits, his eyes narrowing as he spotted Bullroarer in the distance. With a guttural roar, he charged forward, determined to crush the leader of these unexpected foes. Bullroarer stood his ground, his gaze steady as Golfimbull approached. He tightened his grip on his club, his jaw set with determination. The two leaders met in the center of the green fields, the air thick with tension as they squared off. Golfimbull swung his club with a ferocity that sent shockwaves through the ground. But Bullroarer was quick, dodging the blow and countering with a strike of his own. Their clubs clashed, the impact echoing across the field like thunder. The hobbits and goblins paused in their fighting, watching as the two leaders battled with unmatched ferocity. The fight was brutal and fierce, each strike a testament to the strength and determination of the fighters. Bullroarer's movements were swift and calculated, each swing of his club carrying the weight of his love for the Shire. Golfimbull, by contrast, fought with reckless abandon, his every move driven by cruelty and greed. Then, in a moment that would become legend, Bullroarer saw his chance. With a mighty swing, he struck Golfimbull's head, clean off, sending it flying through the air. The goblin's head sailed across the field, landing in a rabbit hole at the edge of the green fields. The hobbits erupted into cheers, their voices ringing out in victory. The goblins, seeing their leader defeated, fled in terror, scattering across the fields and disappearing into the distant hills. The battle was won, the Shire safe once more. But Bullroarer's final strike had done more than defeat the goblins. According to the tales, that mighty blow also marked the invention of the game of golf, as Golfimbull's head rolled neatly into the hole, a detail that would be recounted with laughter and pride by generations of hobbits to come. Chapter 5. Peace Restored. With the goblins defeated, peace returned to the Shire, and Bullroarer Took's name was forever etched into the history of his homeland. The Hobbits celebrated their victory with feasts and songs, toasting to the bravery of Bullroarer and the courage of all who had stood by his side. The green fields, once a quiet place of wildflowers and gentle hills, became a symbol of Hobbit resilience, a reminder that even the smallest folk could stand tall in the face of danger. Bullroarer himself returned to the Tookland, where he was hailed as a hero. But despite the praise, he remained humble, never boasting of his victory. For him, the true reward was knowing that the Shire was safe, that the land he loved so dearly would continue to thrive in peace. Years passed, and the tales of Bullroarer Took grew into legend. Hobbits told their children stories of the great battle, of the courage that had saved the Shire, and of the game of golf that had come from that fateful day. And every year, on the anniversary of the battle, the Tooks would gather on the green fields to remember their ancestors' bravery and celebrate the peace he had brought to the Shire. In time, the Shire returned to its quiet ways, the memories of the goblin invasion fading into stories told by the fire. But Bullroarer's legacy endured, a beacon of courage and strength that reminded the hobbits of the power within their small but mighty heart. And so, as the stars shone down on the peaceful fields of the Shire, the legend of Bullroarer Took lived on, a tale of bravery, of love for one's home, and of a hero who brought peace to the Shire with a single, unforgettable blow.